today. Okay? Now I'm going to have her read my speech. That's my own words. Okay? Here it goes.
My name is Jane Stelkia. My Indian name is Kwaikin Meet. Thank you for coming to my birthday. I am from the Osseous Indian band, Okanagan Nation. We are Skeluch in our language, which is Ku Skeluch. And in English, it is we are Indians. In our language, the colonial government gave us the legal name of Indian when they enacted the Indian Act in 1876. Traditionally, how we identify is through our language, which is tied to our territory. We are governed by the Indian Act. Many of us went to Indian residential schools, but I didn't. Many of us, myself included, live on Indian reserves. Who here is Indian? Do you identify as an Indian? Why are some Indians ashamed to be called Indians? Indians are the ones that went through hell by the government, not the Aboriginals or the Indigenous or the First Nations. When I was a child, I never heard us being called First Nations or Aboriginal. What I know of back then, when I was young, was the people of Australia were called Aboriginals. I feel that the government is trying to link us with Aboriginals, Indigenous, and First Nations to sidestep the hell that the government put all us Indians through. They hope that in 50 or 100 years, no one will remember the Indians that went through hell. They want to erase that part of our history because they couldn't erase us. Since I was young, all I heard was that we were Indians. Until the past 20 years, I never heard the words First Nations or Aboriginals among us. Aboriginals are from Australia. The government is trying to lump all the colonized people of the world together by giving them all the same name. Just another form of colonization. Where did the word Indians come from? It is widely held that the name was given by Christopher Columbus in 1492 when he arrived in North America. He thought he was in the Indies, which is part of Asia. Now it is confusing because so many East Indians and Indo-Canadians are also called Indians to describe themselves. They are East Indians, they are not us and what happened to us as Indians. They are called that because they come from India. India became India. India became India in 1947. In India, in Asia. So for 532 years, we have been called Indians here in what is now called Canada. Then suddenly in the 1970s and 1980s, the colonial government started calling us First Nations and Aboriginals, and then legally renamed us Aboriginal in the Canadian Constitution. I wonder why they did that. Why are we still called Indians under the Indian Act, but Aboriginal under the Canadian Constitution? Did the Indians ask for this? Where did it come from? Why, I ask. Is this to erase what they did to the Indians before 1982, before we became Aboriginal, Indigenous, First Nations? Is this so they can redirect our attention from what they did to us before 1892? Think Indian residential school, 60 scoop, blankets contaminated with smallpox and TB, genocide. Now, where are the Indians and where did Indigenous come from? I learned that the name Indigenous is a name used by the is a name used by the United Nations since the 1970s to describe original inhabitants worldwide. So this is just lumping us with all the other original people of the world, isn't it? It is a generic term for colonized people. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau was the one who started calling us First Nations during his political term from 1968 to 1984. In 1982, he named us Aboriginals in the Canadian Constitution. He did this because he failed at abolishing established treaties and the Indian Act in 1969 with the infamous White Paper. All of this was just a strategy to break up the powerful National Indian Brotherhood because nations need boundaries, and boundaries lead to conflict over resources. Think about this and where we are today. To me, Aboriginal means not original, and Indigenous comes from indigent, which means a bum, hobo, a helpless person. That is not what Indians are. My big problem with, if we adopt this new identity as Indigenous, First Nations, or Aboriginal, then 50 years from now, nobody will know the history of wrong done to us. People will forget that we are the Indians. This is just a more indirect genocide of what was left after the first genocide didn't work. If ever there's a payout for the wrongdoing done to all the Indians, only the ones who identify as Indians will receive it. My idea of a payout is bringing back the language to the fullest. All the Indian teachers need to have learned the culture of language. The language frees us Indians of everything that was taken from us. Our titles, our rights, our land, and our resources, and whatever you can come up with. Robbie Robertson passed away in August 2023. He was a Mohawk Indian pop star from the Six Nations Reserve. He said when he was just starting out, he didn't call himself an Indian because if he did, he wouldn't get anywhere with singing and songwriting. When I was a kid, I always heard we were Indians, and the kids at the Indian residential schools that were abused, raped, and killed were Indian children. The government was hell-bent on getting rid of all the Indians, starting with our children. I was part of a book published by the ONA called Take the Indian Out of the Child, to describe the experiences of Indians who lived through the genocide of the residential schools years. The teacher, priests, and nuns tortured, raped, and murdered Indian children. They called them savages and decided to teach the kids their way of living and not let them speak their language in the residential school. Take the Indian out of the child. Who here is a savage? In my mind, I feel there is no difference between Putin killing Ukrainians, Hitler rounding up and killing the Jews, and the Canadian residential school system rounding up and killing Indian children. What is the difference? Google lists 36 different world events considered genocide, and only one is relevant to North American Indians, and that was the Osage Indian murders of Oklahoma. The government wanted to get rid of the Indians. There's no mention of this on the extermination of Beothuk of Newfoundland, nor the Canadian residential school system, but it happened, and us Indians know it happened. The one thing that almost all acts of genocide have in common is the desire for land and resources. Putin wanted Ukraine's land, our colonial government wants the Indians' land. The government has always tried to get rid of the Indian. Now they're doing it by getting rid of the word Indian. Indians who identify as Aboriginal, Indigenous, First Nations will not agree between the different nations. And this is what the government wants. Us Indians must stick with one name. It is the only way we'll get somewhere. After all, we were brown since day one. We are Indians. We are the Okanagan Nation of Indians. The only way we can bring back our unity as if we are all Indians in the eyes of the government. The only way is the word Indian and be one. We are known as Indians from day one. I will remind you that Pierre Trudeau started calling us First Nations in the late 1960s as part of his white paper and his attempt to abolish the Indian Act. He then named us Aboriginals in the Canadian Constitution in 1982. Don't you see this as the government's way of confusing the issue, making us forget about what they did to us Indian people and dividing us as Indian people? Divide and conquer is alive and well. I ask you, the Chief and Council, to work on this and put it in front of the government as soon as possible. We are all Indians, and that is how we need to be identified. Now the Chiefs are having trouble having one voice. So have one voice by being Indians, because that's what we are. We need to stop taking the Indian out of the children, past, present, and future. Fight to put the Indian back. We have allies. My good friend who is from India is sharing this with his temple. He agrees that his people should be called by Sikh or Hindu or whatever. My other friend who is a French scientist will be publishing her work using the term Indian as well. This needs to get out there far and wide. Thank you, White.
One day I was sitting down at home and all I heard when I was going around is Aboriginals, First Nations and all that. And then I thought, oh no. And here, right now, there's not too many here now. I don't know if they want to leave here. I have, where's my bag? Where is it? I want to show you. I don't think I'm going to get into that. It's getting pretty late. A lot of people has left. I wanted to read it while the people was here full, but there now it's just not too many here. Here in these, can you get them out from me? No, not those albums, just the albums. Here I have one album that's real old. And that's the other one. It's really old, and it's an album that I cut out from years and years ago. Just think I was young and I did this. And hold it up. And that's all got just nothing but Indians. I don't know where the First Nations and all that come from. We are not. We are Indians. We were called from that from day one. So we got to stick to that. And if you go to court and say you're from somewhere or whatever, I've been in the court quite a few times. People have taken me to court. And what? You know what? I won them all. Yeah, and so I know all about courts and how it works because, like I said, I lived it. And for 95 years I've lived this and I know it. And my grandmother, she had a picture in that. And another thing I want to talk about a little bit, I won't go in it for too long, because this is a long one. What it is discipline. We were disciplined when we were little, right from, you can discipline a little baby even that's crawling. How you do that is right now, if any babies come to my house, all my stuff is around there. And the baby's crawling, and all I have to do is say, no, don't touch. They learn. They know. And right from that, it's discipline. It's what us Indians had. until the government come in and said, you can't touch your child. And they taught the kids how to dial, just little 4 or 5-year-olds, 911. So therefore, that's why we're having, all the people around are having trouble by kids not listening, and they're getting into trouble and all that, and I better quit talking about this. I'll go into liquor now. And I'm gonna drop the other part, so just read the liquor now.
All these problems that we are having with drugs and violence was started with racist colonial liquor laws. That's what created the drunken Indian stereotype and its problems. And now we got new problems. In Canada, in the Indian Act from 1886 till 1951, it was illegal for Indians to drink liquor. Then, from 1951 to 1956, Indians could only drink liquor in beer parlors. They could not buy it to take home. In BC, in 1887, the Habitual Drunkards Act was also called the Indian List because all Indians were put on it and considered drunks. The Liquor Act of 1921 also banned the sale of liquor to Indians. This was changed in 1951. But Indians could only drink in beer parlors, nowhere else, and they could not buy it in stores until 1962. And some Indians rioted in Prince Rupert. By discriminating and only allowing Indians to drink in beer parlors meant that people had to travel a long way to have a drink. They could not have a drink the way the settlers could or bring some home. The Indians were hard-working people, and then everything changed when the beer parlors opened for the Indians to drink in there only. The Indians went there and drank themselves to get drunk, get served till drunk, then kicked out into the streets and arrested and put in jail. Rode miles on horses just to get drunk. So this is where the drunken Indians come from, because they fall and stumble outside the beer parlors drunk and get thrown in the drunk tank. Still, the Indians worked hard, and some got rich in cattle and horses, and they were happy. Next thing, the liquor stores opened in the 1960s, and the Indians went wild. Before the hard liquor opened up, the Indians had cattle ranches, and then when it opened up, they started selling off their stock, trucks, and horses, and then they started going downhill, become drinking and raising hell. Back then, when they got drunk, they would beat up their women and not work, and now all their fences are all down, and the next generation don't know how to work or run a ranch or farm. Turf wars over drugs started here in the 1980s. 1982. Reason I know it was 1982 was because I was getting the rodeo going, and I noticed drug dealers started buying pit bulls. Okay. Okay. This one?
Yes, start
Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is another one. My name is Jane Stelkia. My Indian name is Kwaikenmeet. I am from the Osuyas Indian Band, Okanagan Nation. I lived through this. I was born in 1930 and am 94 years old. Hey, 95 now. All these problems we are having with the drugs and violence started with racist colonial liquor laws. That's what created the drunken Indian stereotype and its problems. And now we got new problems. There are many Indians getting shot in turf wars and many more dying from the toxic drugs. Turf wars over drugs started here in the 1980s. 1982, Reason I know it was 1982 was because I was getting the rodeo going, and I noticed drug dealers started buying pit bulls with studded collars for security. These people and their turf wars started showing up here 40 years ago, way before the pot shops. We are on our second generation of organized crime and drug dealers. The difference between the pot shops and the criminal drug dealers is the illegal and toxic drugs that are being sold, not pot. The war over territories for the distribution of toxic drugs is deeply embedded within our communities. These crime rings prey on young kids who take an oath to never tell, and they are embedded in our reserves. The Assembly of First Nations says that it's worse for us Indians than for others, which tells me they are hiding on our reserves. These turf wars happen at all levels in the chain of command. They will kill you over money. They will kill you over turf. They will kill you if you know too much. It is common knowledge on investigative media that there is a chain of command among the toxic drug dealers, starting with the local dealers, regional dealers, and on up the chain to the bosses at the top. This is organized crime, and it's not operating out of legal pot shops. We could close all the pot shops, but the situation would be worse because it will all go underground, and then there will be more violence and killing. Most of the pot shops are legitimate businesses. We just must make sure that only the legitimate businesses selling legal products are allowed to operate. We must also break the stereotype of the drunken Indian and see that our future generations are set on the right path. These drug wars are just another form of colonial oppression. The government won't do anything about